Yeah. So we're going to start, even though Natalie still wants to have a conversation with Josh, and we haven't yet got Mel. If you've attended today, but you are not a member of OSPB and you're a councillor, just catch my eye or catch Sam's eye and you can contribute. And here's Mel. Mel, I've been just waiting for you to arrive. So welcome, Mel. So, without further ado, let's go through the start of the meeting. So, apologies and welcome. We've got apologies, I think, from a few. David, who's David? Richard Udall emailed me to say he had something else he had to do today. And who else have we got sending apologies?
From the board chair, we've got apologies from councillors Jenny Shaw, Richard Tudge and Richard Udall. From the cabinet, we've got apologies from councillor Joe Monk and Rob Wharton. Just to remind everybody, this meeting is also being webcast.
Doing my rough arithmetic, there are 14 of us, are there not? And there are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the room, so there are 4 people missing. Did you say 4 people? 3 people. Okay, so unless my arithmetic's wrong, 8, 9, 10, so...
We're still waiting for Councillor Matthew Jones at the moment.
So Matthew and the other 3 that already identified. Thank you. Declarations of any interest in any party whip. There being none, public participation. There being none, budget scrutiny, which is a substantive item for today. And I welcome Justin, who's going to be speaking on behalf of the administration. Thank you, Justin. Steph, who's going to be here, as she always is. Thank you. And the Chief Exec is here again, and I'm grateful to him giving up his afternoon to be with us. So those are the pleasantries. The main purpose of the meeting today is to allow the panel chairs to give some feedback on the panel meetings they've recently hosted. But we're going to take the opportunity, nevertheless, to talk to Steph and Justin and Paul about how things are emerging in terms of the process to deliver a budget on the 26th of Feb. We note OSPB has another scheduled meeting for the day before. It couldn't be better, on the 25th. We are not scheduling any budget stuff at that meeting, but it may be that we do, depending on how things evolve in the next few weeks. So we're holding that meeting with other items of interest, but we may take the opportunity and then we'd have to act jolly quickly to get a recommendation to you that same day ahead of the council meeting the following day. Council meeting is never really a good meeting to get into the detail. It's just not possible. It's too formal. So OSPB may have a useful job to do that afternoon. So that's on the 25th, and we look forward to you attending, if necessary, that meeting as well. So the purpose of today, as I say, is to allow the panel chairs to give us some feedback from their most recent meetings, but I'm not going to miss the opportunity to also talk in more general terms about where we are with the budget process. But before any of that, my Vice Chairman wants to talk to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before we start, I'd just like to make a comment, really. I welcome the reports from the panel chairs and the comments that they've made. I am disappointed by the outcomes, however. The main comments of each item are regarded as welcome and noted, but no positive recommendations have come forward regarding savings in your areas. We understand this council is in a financial mess, and we don't need to go back over old ground of responsibility. But what we needed to do is to urgently train our minds on the future savings for this council. And I would like a comment by each of the panel chairs of what they've done to positively try to look at savings for this council.
That's going to make a far more interesting meeting than I imagined. That was me thinking it was a straightforward meeting. Okay, so the gauntlet has been thrown down. Josh is itching to say something. I'm not going to allow us to spend 2 hours talking about what my vice chairman has said, but I do think he's asking you a direct question, and it deserves a response. Josh.
Yeah, thanks. And we all do a pre-meet before this, just so that anyone who's listening live doesn't understand. And we all have a chat about some of the things that we might bring up. But Councillor Bennett decided he didn't want to bring that up then and give us the courtesy of talking to us offline. But as Councillor Wells also said, I'm not giving state secrets away about how we don't want to clip things up for social media. That felt like something for social media. I'll have you know, I asked in my panel about future savings. No future savings were brought forward. I also turned up to Children's. Councillor McVeigh can answer it better than I can. There was no future savings brought forward by the Cabinet then, just a promise that something might happen on the 5th of February. I also watched every other scrutiny meeting and nothing was brought forward by the Cabinet. So the Cabinet should bring something forward. They're the ones who are paid to do it. They're the ones who can sit through it line by line and tell you what they want for the future of this. So I'd ask you to please be a bit more respectful to people who give up their time to come and try and help and try and scrutinise the council. And in the future, if you want to try and have this like back and forth, if you just want to have a conversation behind scenes, I'm going to give you a more detailed answer.
Can I?
You are going to be able to come back, but I'm going to collect any other voices, and then you can come back on others. So pretty much everyone wants to speak, as I imagine they would. Seb, you're next.
Yeah, I think it would have been far more helpful if we could have had feedback, because I have a number of vacancies from the administration as well. So we can't have a collective conversation because not everyone is present. I take issue with your question. I think it's a bit discourteous to do it on a recorded meeting rather than beforehand. We did have very positive conversation, but equally officers in my area of Corp and Com are feeling uneasy at the moment with LGR around the corner, and I'm not going to band about savings that may not be done. I'm not in the administration. I'm here to scrutinise the cuts that have been proposed. I'm happy to put it in writing what I would do, but again, I'm not in control of this council.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think I've made it as chair of the HOSC. We work very closely with public health, and I've got a direct line to Dr. Lisa McNally, our public health director. Absolutely, I'm looking all that I can do and have done for the last 7-8 years around prevention. The biggest thing you can do as an administration, which I've said on many occasions, is come up with a plan. Because if you had a plan aligned to your key strategic purposes, you would then have some alignment in how you spend money for the best outcomes. But I have said this on many occasions, I've suggested it nicely, and nobody takes you up on it. So to sit there, Councillor Bennett, and to raise this in a public meeting, I think the public should know this council has no plan. It has no plans to make a plan as far as I can see. And I run Bromsgrove District Council, and the first thing I did within 6 months of being appointed with no overall control was to sit down and work with the administration and across the parties to come up with a plan, which we mutually agreed. I did suggest this at the offset and was told, well, many of the key components will come round the corner, but it isn't there. So I think it's rather an unfair criticism. Prevention is the key to keeping people out. You need to take preventative actions, as I've said. So we need to do strength and balancing classes, which we are doing in terms of health, to try and improve the outcomes of health for our population. But from my perspective, the public health ring-fence grant, you may or may not know, is ring-fenced for public health. Thank you.
Can we keep to the point that Roger was making? There will be opportunities to talk about the work of the panel in due course. So can we keep ourselves focused on what Roger was asking of you, and Marcus is next.
Yeah, so a few comments, and I'm very surprised by the comments from your Vice Chairman, Mr. Chairman. And as I alluded to in the pre-meet, the overwhelming income and resource in respect to the economy panel is indeed external grant. There is some net budget, in fact 768,000 down to 690, and then in the skills and investment for adult learning it's 334,000 in the current budget. It's proposed to be 424,000. So that's relatively small amounts of cash, and in fact the change overall in those two budget lines is £20,000. So I don't think I need to make any specific point overall. The big spenders are children and adults, and I'm sure the colleagues around the table in those panels will have acted appropriately. But the reality is this, Councillor Bennett, and I don't say this to be political, but it is the way a council runs. You are in the administration, the leader and the executive set out a plan and the proposals, and they set out what their proposals are to balance the books. Last May, you and your colleagues, when you came into office, said that you were going to cut taxes and you were going to drive out waste. So I'm very keen to hear how much council tax is going to be cut by in this budget, okay? Very keen to hear, as are all of the residents who you told it would be. And I'm very keen to hear how many millions of pounds out of the £495 million net revenue budget that was set last year you think was waste, and how much of that is now going out in the budget for 26-27, because I haven't seen much of it yet. And finally, and I will make the point others have made, there are no less than now, thanks to the promotion of Councillor Nick Price to the executive, and congratulations to him, there are now 3 vacancies on the economy panel, all from Reform members, and no sign of them being appointed to.
Okay, before I ask Nat to speak, can I just ask all of you here today to think carefully about the words you use and how they may be misinterpreted or interpreted. We're here in a non-political way, so that's our job. We can be critical, we can be critical friends, we can be friends, we can be all those things, but we can't be political. So can we leave that baggage at the door, however frustrating it may feel? Natalie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Congratulations, Vice Chair, on your attempt at a gotcha moment there. As others have said, we do have a pre-meet for those of you watching online when we have an opportunity to discuss all of the things that we want to bring up. As chair of a panel, like others have said, I asked my whole panel for ideas. I prepare for my meetings. I put 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours even, preparation time into my panels to make sure that I understand the issues. We've been asking for corporate plans, strategies and priorities for some months now. And, you know, we haven't seen them. And we are not the administration. It is not up to us to come up with the ideas. That's for you to work with the officers. The administration works with officers. I've been in governance of the council before to make decisions about where savings might be made, but you certainly ought to have identified your priorities by now. My panel and my area of work and my officers are reliant on central government funding, white papers and strategies from government for a great deal of our work, and we are still waiting for those. And at every opportunity I get, and I do get probably more than most in this room because I sit in a room with government office.
You are straying a little bit from the topic.
I'm not. I'm giving reasons as to why I am not able to come up. Sorry, Chair, but as a panel, we are very limited as to the things that we can come up with in terms of savings, because we have such big spend items, and you all know that, and they're reliant on getting the DSG and the high needs deficits down. We're reliant on government for that information. They don't take over until the statutory override ends in 2028. We're still waiting for information about how we can bring our debts down with that. We can't do that on our own, okay? So that's my answer from my panel. Please come up with a plan and some priorities to help guide us.
Okay, I've got one more, which is Mel, unless Dave or is it Sam? Dave or Sam may have something. But it was a really question to the panel chairs, I think. So, Mel?
Chair, thank you. It's a very appropriate and timely question, and I think as we will go back round, we will talk through the work of the panel and what we fed through. But just this weekend, actually, I was on a course. I was on an LGA Leadership Essentials Effective Scrutiny Programme course. So I gave up my entire weekend, and here is my certificate. Thank you. And our panel did look at making savings, but I would like to highlight, fresh from LGA governance training, I have a Venn diagram. It talks about mayor cabinet roles and scrutiny roles. And with the budget, proposing and monitoring the budget is the cabinet role, and the monitoring of budget is the scrutiny role. And I have that here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just come in, Chairman? Yes. And wasn't the leader of the council on that course?
No.
Well, I think she was on the LGR.
Well, we're not going to start talking about what the leader of the council has or hasn't attended. Forgive me. I'm trying to protect some of you from yourselves right now. So I'm going to let Justin and Roger come back, but I think the collective message, if I'm receiving it correctly, is the job of scrutiny is to scrutinise the executive and their emerging policies. They are not policy development groups. Now, maybe they should be. Maybe we should broaden the role to have scrutiny and policy included within that remit. It may be something that we have to think about going forward. But to manage expectation now, as OSPB chairman, I would say the fundamental role of OSPB and its constituent panels is to scrutinise whatever is placed in front of it. That is how it is now. Now, we can change, we can emerge, we can evolve going forward, but that's how it is now. Roger, you have the chance to respond, and then I'm going to bring Justin in.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I raised this, it wasn't for political reasons at all. There was no political reasons and nothing to do with Facebook or whatever. I raise this for the simple question that I think that the panel chairs have certain responsibilities. Yes, they scrutinise, we all know that, whatever the Cabinet does. But I think they share that responsibility in looking at their own muck heap, as it were, to see if there's any savings, and a responsibility of a councillor is to bring that forward. I'm disappointed that nothing has come forward.
Where's yours, Councillor Bennett? Councillor Bennett, after all that, where's your plan for the savings? Where is it?
I am not a member of the administration, am I?
You're a vice chair. You're a vice chair of. You're a vice chair.
Listen,
you're a vice chair of OSPB.
I am not a member of the
You called on
Cabinet.
the chairs of scrutiny panels to come up with a plan, and you were disappointed with it. As vice chair of OSPB,
Josh,
can you
please,
bring your plans
Josh,
forward?
please respect the position of chair, even if you don't respect me.
I do respect you, Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm just asking a simple question, that was all.
I think you've actually posed a really helpful question, because I think it's exposed where we are right now. And that is, to my mind, it's all hands to the pump. But we are not the think tank for the administration. The panel chairs are not the think tank for the administration. But if you want meaningful, engaged, constructive contributions to future policy and future budget policy, then we have to be armed with the relevant information and backdrop to be able to do that. No one can do that on the hoof. We need to tool people up to be able to do that. And that's going to involve quite a lot of work, not just a couple of meetings every couple of months. Karen, I'm going to ask Justin. I will come back to you, I promise. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I thought Councillor Bennett's question was a fair point, and I didn't actually think it was a controversial question. And I would point to the last time I was here, which was my debut, and Councillor Udall, who addressed the issue of the car parking charges. He didn't just say we shouldn't have them. He actually then went on to say this is what we can do instead, and put forward revenue-raising suggestions which we can take forward, and we are taking forward. So I thought the responses were interesting, and I will leave it at that. In terms of a plan, we have got a plan. There is a corporate plan which was already in place, which is continuing and will continue. But more specifically, our plan is the budget, which is to tackle the financial emergency, because until we do that, nothing else gets done. So we do have a plan. And actually, we've worked with colleagues to develop that plan, and that's what's going to be discussed next month. Next month still, February 26th. And, I'm just surprised it was a controversial question.
It was going to be controversial. Justin, just so I've got the message clear here, you're saying you're going to produce a revised corporate plan next month. Is that what you're saying?
No, Chair.
Okay.
Our plan is the budget, because we have to tackle a financial emergency before we can actually do anything else.
I'm going to let Karen come back in. Can I just, before I forget the point I was going to make, I will get back to you. The point has been made ad nauseum both today and previously about the context in which we establish savings. And there doesn't seem to be any coherent plan that informs that process. It's rather a question, forgive me, of saying, where's the low-hanging fruit? Let's grab it. £2 million of pension savings, some money out of highways, some money out of here, some money out of there. That's your 9.1. Relatively painless. And I guess if there was a strategy, it was, what can we do with the minimum pain? This is what we can do with the minimum pain. But the budget process doesn't stop, does it, Justin, on the 26th of Feb? Given the crisis we're in, it's an ongoing project. And I guess what members, the panel chairs today are saying, until we get a plan to identify really clearly about the future direction of this council and be lean and mean. There was a time when the government encouraged us to be lean and mean. Marcus was reminding us of that. Until we get that context, it's really difficult to judge that budget reduction. So we haven't got anything to judge it against at the moment, other than it's statutory or it's discretionary. But there's a million ways of doing the statutory. It's the Rolls-Royce version and the Robin Reliant version. And unfortunately, administrations have learnt that quite often the things that matter most people, a lot of people out there, are the nice things we do that are discretionary, country parks and so on. But of course, we are burdened, we have the responsibility, huge responsibility, to deliver efficient provision for SEND people and elderly people and so on. So I think the plea today, amongst anything else you've heard, is can we have a revised corporate plan? You've inherited the previous administration's corporate plan. As a new administration, I personally am surprised it's 9 months down the road and you haven't seen any need to change that. And I think we probably need to at some point soon. Justin, I'm going to let you respond, then I'm going to come to Karen. And then we're going to go through the panels.
Thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right. We do need a direction. Part of that was the LGR report and taking us into One Worcestershire. So that is part of that. And as soon as we've got this budget and sorted and agreed and through, then we can really see where we are and see where, okay, heading into LGR over the next 18 months to 2 years, what are the key changes? There will be a transformation plan, which will, I think somebody mentioned about Councillor Price's appointment will be a big part of that. But it is stages. We have to get this bit done first, and then we can really, press on into LGR. But the bones of it are in the LGR report as well. So it's not that there's nothing. There are things in place, but we've got to get through this first hurdle of the budget.
Thank you very much indeed. So the Conservative plan was such a good plan that it's been reinvigorated for this Reform administration that have decided that they will continue with where we started. I'll just leave it there. Words absolutely leave me horrified. In between something coming forward for a plan, monies will be coming out from central government. There will be grants available. I fear that as we haven't got a plan with key strategic purposes, that we'll be left in a weakened position, not having the hooks within our plan to apply for those grants. I know at Bromsgrove that's why we got £15 million of levelling up money, because it was a key strategic purpose. I don't see evidence of this, and I know you can say, oh, she's playing politics. I'm not. I'm really concerned that we have an administration here making decisions about potential cuts, understanding aside from statutory delivery, but where is the statutory delivery? The point was made in our pre-meet. Is it the Rolls-Royce of statutory delivery, or is it the Morris Minor of statutory delivery? We don't have any defined outlines of what we're doing. We're insulted by the administration when we ask questions, and really pertinent questions. And then we have that diatribe at the start about what we should all be doing. So my question,
I'm just going to say this. I can see you're feeling very passionately about this matter.
Well, I don't like being insulted.
Let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence. I am going to urge you, nevertheless, to just be careful about the language. This is not a forum, is it, for that sort of stuff. We're here to, and we always do, rise above that, because we're sophisticated human beings and we can do so. So let's just keep the bar nice and high, because once it gets down there, all hell broke loose.
Well, if you don't mind me saying, Chairman, the fact that what commenced the meeting lowered the bar to the lowest level possible.
You're perfectly entitled to your view. Right, I'm going to move us on, if I can. My intention is to talk to Paul and Justin and Steph and just ask if they've got an update at all in their thinking as we move towards February the 26th. And I'm going to raise the issue about council tax because the folks out there will be very interested to understand the latest position about what's emerging in your thinking as a likely parameters. I'm not going to ask you to nail a figure today, but if you could give us some parameters that we might be functioning within, that would be helpful, I think. So if you could give us a low figure and a high figure, it's not likely to be less than that, Tom, it's not likely to be more than that, so that we know the sort of level of council tax residents might expect. So could we have a go with that first of all? I don't know whether that's a Justin question. Maybe it is. It's a political question, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair. In some ways, we are where we were, just a few weeks ago, where we were when we asked the government to allow us what would in effect be up to 10%. So the parameters, I can't give you more than it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10% because that's what we've asked for. The government will decide on that. The bottom line is the increase will be, there are two things. One is based on what the government allows, but also secondly, it will be the amount necessary to avoid a Section 114 notice. Nobody wants to raise council tax. It goes against everything that we stand for, and colleagues as well. Nobody comes into this job wanting to raise council tax. But the position we are in is that we are on the brink of a Section 114 notice. So the council tax rise will be the amount necessary to avoid that. It won't be more than that. We're not going to do any more than we absolutely have to. But that is where it will be. And the one thing, Chair, that we won't do is, we're not going to try and pull the wool over people's eyes. That level is what is needed. So, that's as much as I can give you at the moment.
So, to paraphrase, it's whatever gets us away from 114 notice, and it's likely to be between 5 and 10%. Steph, just give me something that a Band D householder might expect to receive on the consequence of a 5% and then a 10%.
Thank you, Chair. All the information is in the Cabinet report that was published on the 13th of January. So if you bear with me 30 seconds, I will bring that report up and I'll be able to quote from it. So just give me a minute to open the document. As people will be aware, the council tax at the moment is one of the lowest in the country.
Steph, we know that. We just wanted to know the figures. And while you're finding them, let me say that I think a 1% increase gives 2.5 mil or thereabouts. 3.6.
Yeah,
okay.
Chair.
Giving you a bit chance to find your page.
Thank you so much.
Chairman, it's £1,615 on a band.
I've got it now.
25-26.
Yeah, 25-26, so 26-27 at a Band D rate at 4.99% would be 1,696.34, and at 9.99%, Band D would be 1,777.12. No, 1,777. So it's £1,777. And that is a difference. You're looking at the difference. The increase from one.
It's 150 £160 a year on a Band D
It's £3.10p at 9.99% a week.
Give me the figure per year so I know what increase in tax. Marcus has got things. I just for the sake of the meeting. About 52. The increase is what I'm asking for.
She'll get it for you.
Okay. While you're finding that step, because that's what matters.
Right, at 9.99%, it's £161.41 increase per annum on a Band property. And at 5%, at 9.99%, it's approximately double that. At £3, sorry, I will get you the numbers. I do apologise.
Just to give some context, Justin has outlined where we are financially, and really what it boils down to, and I think is probably helpful to the debate, is we've got a number of tools in the bag, haven't we? We either increase our income, we either reduce our expenditure, or we move our money between services that we provide, i.e. away from services that are not required by statute and towards statute. I take as read that we need to be more efficient, we need to be driving improvement, we do that. We've heard about whether or not we don't have Rolls-Royce services anymore. We have been at this, as everybody in this room will know, and colleagues that I've worked with before. We have taken very difficult reductions over many years. We've also had the debate against whether, with hindsight, we should have put the council tax up more in those years. But, you know, each year is separate. And at the end of the day, we just heard it today, we are going to set the council tax that we absolutely need. And I'm sure colleagues would argue that back in those years, they set the council tax that they absolutely needed. Yes, with hindsight, we might have known that we would need more in future and therefore should have put it up earlier. There are arguments to and fro both ways that politicians, I'm sure, will take up. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think it's about blame, and I don't think it's about poor operations or management historically. I think we have done the best we can with the conditions that we had, and for a long period of time, the people of Worcestershire have had a lower council tax than many people in the country. We have come to the end of that journey at the present time, and what we have suggested to the administration, and we would have said this to any of you if you were in power, is you have those three options. Move your money around between services, which will mean cutting some services we currently do. Drive up your income levels, which is either council tax or charges. There aren't many charges in county councils compared to either unitaries or districts, so it's a fairly limited area you can go for in terms of income. Or you fundamentally cut your services, including your statutory areas, which may mean you are below the requirements that you have to provide. I think the decision so far has been that we're not going to be a failing council. We did cut children's services many years ago. We took huge amounts of money out of children's services, and look what happened. We ended up in intervention, we put it all back in and more, and have ended up where we are. So we've learned, you know, if you think about, we've learned a lot of lessons. We've tried a lot of things. We've tried to say, well, maybe the statute doesn't need to be quite that high, and we've reduced things. So where we are at the moment is there has been, and I know there's been conversations between groups about certain things being put back in, and we've got to a level of savings that have been put forward that seem to have a broad compliance, because we don't have an overall majority, so there does have to be agreement with at least some people in the room other than the administration. And we are in a position where that will require either a level of EFS which the Section 151 officer is uncomfortable with, as am I, at 71 million and increasing, because we have found recently that things like the council tax levels in terms of new house building and the surplus in the fund that gets collected is lower this year than we were expecting and has been in previous years. That's cost us another 2.5 million. It's gone the wrong way. The government settlement for 3 years, yes, we've got 3 years, we can see it, but actually it's lower
than inflation or what we were expecting. So that is worse than we were expecting. And at 71 million, you have to ask yourself that currently in year there is 35 million of EFS. You add to that next year's 71 or 74 million if you put the extra 2.5 million on. That's over 100 million pounds. And then we've still got 1 year to go before LGR, where the transformations will give us some broader opportunities, and it's all within that bid. There is a very detailed bid about how we balance the books within that. But you'll be getting towards 200 million pounds worth that has to be paid back. And remember, that is day-to-day spend. Every day that happens. So you create a cliff edge of 200 million for the new council being created. I don't think that is a viable way forward. We have to limit our positions. And ultimately, that comes back to then having flexibility for council tax. Because council tax, if you were to charge 10%, and I'm not suggesting by any means that that is the position, is a £54 million difference over 3 years. Because it gives us £18 million extra that is compounded every year. And so you can see against a potential £200 million cost, even from one action, reduces that by a quarter. And so that is where the real numbers are against this backdrop. So yes, we could increase the 9 million and cut more things, but it would be in those areas. There are other things that have been debated that could go on there and push that number up. But those have been generally, I think, debated by members and felt to be not acceptable. And then or we look at pushing our income up. And so that's really where we are, and I think that's the context. But I think that's where we need to be. There are lots of reasons why we are where we are now. I don't think any of them are because people have done the wrong thing. They've done what was sensible at the time.
Thank you, Chief Exec. That was very helpful contribution. Steph, have you got the figures?
I have, and sorry, they
go for it.
Didn't cover myself in much glory there, Chair,
No,
so
it's
apologies. So at 4.99%, it is an increase from the current bandee of £80.62 per year, and at 9.99%, bandee equivalent would be £161.41 above the current bandee rate as at today.
Really, really helpful to get those figures because it matters out there. Josh, anything relating to that? Because what I'm going to do in a second is invite all the panel chairs to tell us about their panel meeting.
It was just on that, because I felt a little bit uncomfortable there. I just want to place on record my thanks to Steph and the help she's given to the Environment Scrutiny panel and putting stuff in real layman terms for us all to be able to understand, and I really appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that, thank you.
Fine officer. I think we all think that. There you go. You weren't expecting that this afternoon. Right, Josh, while you've got the floor... Okay. Well, okay, so Seb, you're going to start off with some... how did your panel go?
Yeah, it was a really, really positive panel. I'm incredibly grateful as well that we were able to work around the diary, and I had my vice chairman there who gave real insight to the whole discussion, so I'd like to say I'm appreciative of that. I'd also like to thank Steph, who did such a wonderful metaphor that I think we can take away from this, which was whenever we get a pay rise as individuals, instead of us saving that for another day, we then start to spend that money and we live within a new means. And that was such a brilliant metaphor that really helped the conversation. So I'd like to thank that. Ultimately, my panel, and I'm very well, I think other panel chairs may be envious, we are always on track with underspends. We have a phenomenal team and they do really, really well at achieving the targets that we do. I think we're always green. So there's not an awful lot I can propose in terms of greater cuts because we are making them. I think we're very much on track with that. We're pressing on. It was a very positive conversation, Chair, and I don't think there's anything that would warrant further deep diving, because actually we did a really good, constructive conversation.
Now, Karen, you're not directly involved in one of the panels we're talking about today, but I am going to invite you to give any update that you have, whether it's related to the budget or just the most recent meeting.
Okay, so the last meeting had to be postponed because of the weather conditions, but absolutely the team are the whole of the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee are committed to looking at prevention, and it's upper and foremost and around the delivery of services and what we can do best for our community. But in terms of the budget, can I just pick up on a point that we all keep speaking about? We speak about 5%, and this is not aimed at you, Steph, you are a fantastic officer, or 9.9%, £161.41. The narrative is never around improving the outcomes for our residents. And I think that's what needs to change. We need to be improving the outcomes. We need to be actually, when you're charging, if you're potentially going to be charging them 10% increase on their council tax, what's going to look and feel different for that resident that's having to pay that additional cost? Thank you.
And before I come on to Marcus, even if we didn't have a refreshed corporate plan, but we had some clear identified goals, of which one might be healthy outcomes and prevention, one might be conserving the environment. I'm just making these up, by the way. But if we had some clear outcomes, then we could measure how is this going to deliver that? Because it isn't all about cuts. Sometimes it's about investment, spend to save, you know. Even if we had those just basic, corporate vision and values and ambition, even if it's not a finely detailed plan, at least we'll have something to measure things against. Justin, then I'm going to come to Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. If you remember at the last OSPB, I actually talked about children and families, and we have a really clear vision where we want to increase the capacity of therapeutic foster homes, that intermediate tier, so that we bring children out of residential homes, because that improves outcomes. So I don't think it's fair to characterise us as not mentioning that, because actually, in directorate by directorate, you are having that. From education, just last month, or earlier this month, we turned down 5.7 million from the government because we recognise the need to increase SEND scores. We want that SEND school built. So we are doing it, and I hope people are recognising that.
They'll have to make their own minds up. Marcus.
Yeah, just to comment on that, and I don't necessarily disagree with my learned colleague to my immediate left, but I think the reality is having the Councillor Byrne set out the administration's position in terms of whether it's a 5% council tax increase or 10%, whatever it is, somewhere in between. Their position is that is predominantly, and I don't necessarily quarrel with this, to tackle the demand-led pressures around children's and adult social care that we're all very familiar with. So the reality is, as we know, as important as it is to ensure that we keep our vulnerable and adults and vulnerable children safe and that we act within the law to fulfil our statutory duties, the overwhelming majority of residents won't see any of that. So it won't, they won't see that, for a 5% increase or 10% increase or even a 2% increase, I've suddenly got greater roads and we've suddenly got new footbridges and we've got all of this, that and the other, because it's going to, that quantum of cash is going to be going to a relatively few thousand of people out of a population of 660,000. So we need to be realistic about that and contextualise it. Now, very briefly, if I can just have another minute on economy and just repeat what I said in the private session, and I'm very grateful to Steph coming to this very building only on Friday afternoon. Or was it Friday morning? No, Friday morning, sorry. Friday morning. I was with Highways Friday afternoon. In terms of the quantum of cash that is allocated out of the budget for economy, we've got circa £4 million gross budget, but actually in the broad scheme of things, with a net revenue budget of £495 million in 25-26, 768k isn't actually a huge quantum of cash. We looked at the proposals for 25-26 versus 26-27, and there's a modest reduction, and that's as a result of 2 vacant posts being managed. And then in terms of the skills investment, there's 90k more, and Steph explained how that was. So there isn't a lot of change there, because the most important thing in terms of economy panel is noting that the skills and investment in 25-26, our gross budget is £7.9 million, and that is virtually all from external grant, because you're just taking away about 334,000 from that. So circa 7.5 million comes externally from government that we get in terms of the academic year. So the budget overall, we concentrated ourselves on looking at everybody else's area of responsibility as we were advised to do so and look at economy. There weren't any major observations on that minor tinkering. We did have quite a canter through our displeasure at the current Labour government's plans to remove all of the UK shared prosperity funding and not to continue it from the 31st of March, because the districts have used that to good effect. Counties had previous LEP funding, and obviously we funded growth hubs and we funded other activities around the skills arena. Certainly I think Bromsgrove, Redditch, Malvern and Wyre Forest have got commissioned youth to get youth unemployment to tackle our needs, and I've seen the data for Wyre Forest, so I think it's had a good effect. And with that funding going, we're going to, certainly as a districts are going to have a long old think about funding that. And I know districts are in discussions with county, and there's a meeting tomorrow afternoon to discuss that. So it'd be very, very disappointing to lose that funding from central government. And that's really, I think, all I've got to say.
Very much, Marcus. Natalie's next.
Have I done something wrong? You normally call me Nat. Either's fine.
Well,
Do you,
yeah, hang on, Nat.
well, I'm going to be moving on to my panel, so if Paul wants to come back, that's perfectly fine.
Paul.
I think, again, it's just a contextual point, and I don't disagree with anything that Marcus has said. One of the things we're also trying to do is, to use a colloquialism, is not throw the baby out with the bathwater in a way, in that, of course, we have to be more efficient. Of course, we have to focus our money onto our statutory services. But it's a real danger that actually we lose incredibly beneficial things. It's Karen's point really around, you know, what the outcomes, what the things that we're delivering for people. And, you know, economic development is one of those easy ones. It's all discretionary. So technically we could sit here as an officer and we could say, you don't need to spend on that, councillor. Take that, even though it's a small amount, 795,000, and put it all towards your statutory services. We're trying not to be that superficial and miss the bigger picture, because actually the future of Worcestershire is about growth. It is about being in a position to drive that forward. It is disappointing, not commenting politically, but it is disappointing that there seems to be money focusing towards mayoral areas as opposed to away from general areas. That's just a fact. And so that is one of the reasons we are pushing very hard to get through LGR, such that once we've done LGR, we can get towards a mayor. Whether members choose that or not is up to them, but that's where the money is. What we don't want to do is cancel everything that we currently do, lose all of that background information, all those relationships, all those partnerships, all those great things we've done in the past, to then try and rebuild them 5 years later. That would cost a load more money to do and really wouldn't suit Worcestershire going forward. So again, contextually, it's your point really about it may be discretionary and statutory, but there are some things in discretionary that just by a freak of law didn't get made statutory. But in reality, people having a future, a job, an income, a way in which to provide for their families will impact on all the statutory services of, can you buy a decent house? Can you send your children to school? Are they going to have a bright future? All of those things that then lead into your health. We have to be able to maintain some level of funding into it. And so we are doing in those areas what Marcus will have seen and has said is, we are doing the efficiency savings. If we can make it more efficient, if we can do it in a different way, if we can drive out costs, we will. We can continue to deliver what we deliver now and still be in a position to drive Worcestershire forward, but we can do it with 2 less people. So that's what we're doing. We're removing those, and we will continue to do it. What we're not doing is leaping to a point of saying, actually, we'll just scoop up every bit of non-statutory money, and that would be the way forward to do it, because it is too simplistic and it doesn't give what people need in terms of the communities we serve. So I think it's a really important point just to support Marcus's position.
I think what you just said probably defines the meeting, actually, about the context and how we move forward to local government review, and whether we commit ourselves to turning the tap off completely on some discretionary services because we don't have to provide them, and then the potential in a new council, a successor council with a new political drive of whatever colour, may then say, but actually that's important to us, and to start from afresh would be hugely expensive and time consuming. I think that's what you're telling me.
Absolutely, Chair. And there are so many more opportunities when, in terms of how you are more efficient, if you look at the business plan. And that's particularly what we focused on our LGR bid. It is about efficiency, effectiveness, and getting bang for your buck. And that is where we think the future, in terms of this council, will go. Yes, we're in a difficult place. Yes, we're going to need to make some difficult decisions, but not decisions that will stop us being a bright and, forward-thinking county, unitary going forward once that opportunity comes to us. So it is about getting through the next 2 years and then delivering a improved system going forward without tripping ourselves up on the way. So, yeah, absolutely right.
Just a political point, without fettering a new administration by creating a template that immediately discounts this, that, or that. Karen.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm absolutely in support of this approach, and the reason is that we will have a time where we won't have a mayor. They're devolving all the money down to the mayors, and we have this area where we get no investment. Our youth unemployment is rising. In Bromsgrove, it's currently at 6%, I'm told, and of grave concern because you could lose a whole generation if you don't upskill them. This is why I think the stopping of this UK Shared Prosperity Fund is the biggest disaster that we face, actually. Because that money we were able to pass over to support Beta Den, the Growth Hub, youth employment and upskilling the workforce that's out there. We're unlikely to get a mayor, a strategic mayor now, until about 2029, 2030. Where's the money coming from in between now and then? If you cut this off completely, you're going to have a whole generation that's lost. So, I am absolutely firmly in support of continuing this, and I've been very vocal on leaders' meetings for Worcestershire to say, I support this. We have to do this. We have a duty of care to our young people in particular, and our businesses. Without our businesses, we have no employment. And again, it goes back to the wider determinants of health. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Natalie.
Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on that, unfortunately, I think we've got a government that are making some really short-sighted decisions and quite frankly showing a lack of understanding of what it's like to be a local government delivery partner, which is what they like to call us. And this short-sightedness is certainly having an impact on us. No less so than in children and families. I'm sure that you've all read the report around our comments around the budget, and thanks again to Steph. She did come to our meeting and spoke extremely well and presented the paper brilliantly. We've welcomed the savings made, but we recognise we still face significant financial challenges, many of them because we are stuck in this limbo position that government aren't giving us the Send White Paper. They're not giving us the information about how to close the high needs deficit and the DSG. We're still waiting. We can't wait until March 2028 when they actually decide that they will start to centrally fund it. We need a plan from them now. So obviously still big challenges. So we've got an ongoing concern regarding DSG and high needs deficit. We did recommend that the Grant Thornton action plan comes to both panels, so both to our panel and the Audit and Governments Committee, because we do actually recognise that we do need to be making progress around closing that gap somehow. So that was a recommendation if you're looking for recommendations. The white paper, Justin and I were actually in a meeting with one of the SEND ministers last week, Georgia Gold, and she didn't share much information ahead. We were expecting it this week, actually, and there's still no sign of it just yet. She didn't tell us when it was coming. And I asked for a bit of information that might help us moving forward as a council from what we might expect in that SEND white paper. And all she said was that there would be a focus from government that children and young people should be able to attend their nearest school if that was the most appropriate, and that they would be funding or wrapping more support around that offer to us as a council. I think we've seen that in evidence actually with the offer they just made to us around the SEND school in Malvern. Do you want this quite small amount of money that you can put into mainstream education, or do you still want your school? Now, something that came out of our meeting was that we're really relieved to hear Councillor Foster say that his recommendation to Cabinet would be that we build the school. We don't take the money and run, we build the school. So we all supported that decision. Makes sense. So Yeah, we need to remember, just to put things into context, that, yeah, we're talking about money and it's big numbers, but this is children and young people's lives, isn't it, at the end of the day? And we did have a slide in our pack about 2 young people that had to be placed in high-level secure emergency accommodation and what that actually cost. But when you are dealing with at-risk, highly at-risk young people, you don't have many options. You have to take that action. Otherwise, you know, what could happen to those young people? So we were pleased as a panel to learn that the council is supporting the creation of a regional safe centre that will offer specialised care in future. But at the moment, we are where we are with it. So that is something that we're pleased to hear. Education sufficiency, we were hearing that the places can be met from September 26th, although we're not too sure about numbers, so we've actually called an extraordinary meeting of our panel this time next week. It's a good job I sit in different chairs each time I'm here, otherwise I might feel like I never go home. But so we've got an opportunity to do a bit of pre-cabinet scrutiny based on the information that comes out there. So, I mean, just to kind of close my comments, if I may, Chair, I just want to reiterate what I've said before. With children and young people, we're in a very delicate situation where we're working towards a SEND improvement plan, but we're also having to look at cuts to services, potentially. So going forwards, how do we square that circle? So that is a concern. And also that there are rumours that the LGR agenda is slipping slightly. Who would have thought it? And that Somerset, who are actually already a unitary authority, have had to apply for ESF themselves when we had to apply for it in December, which just makes me worry that LGR might not give us the golden egg that we're all so eagerly awaiting. So just to be alive and awake to some of those threats, I think, that are coming forward. And, you know, I'm not arrogant enough to think I'm the only person that thinks that. I know Justin's nodding and we agree on a lot of things. So I think I've gone on a bit too long, but we did note the report, welcome some of the savings and made a few recommendations ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for a very fulsome report there. Is there anything that you'd like to come back on, Justin, Paul, Steph?
It's just to say, completely agree in terms of Councillor McVeigh saying that, you know, we should be doing things now that are important anyway, regardless actually of what happens with LGR. And that's what we're doing, you know, in terms of children and families. You know, the changes that we're making are because that is what is needed to make the service better and actually to resolve some of those structural problems that have got us into this mess in the first place. So it's nothing to do really with LGR. It is all about actually making outcomes for children and families better.
Thank you. Mel's next. Good afternoon, Mel.
Chair, thank you. Good afternoon. Yeah, at the last meeting, we covered 2 key areas, obviously budget scrutiny, and also we looked at the report, the local account for adult social care, which is all about adult social care and what has been done and where they're looking to improve. And it had accounts from 5 people who have used the service, which have been anonymised, and they were happy to give their details, and it was quite moving to hear what we had done for them, and very positive. So essentially budget scrutiny was the main debate. And similar to other panels, we acknowledge decisions made at full council. The proposal to introduce car parking charges at countryside centres was withdrawn, and the proposal in relation to home to school transport. So we noted that the identified savings for the council now stood at 8.945 million. Yeah, and we also wanted to highlight adult services has a net forecast overspend of 9.9 million for 25-26, which is a slightly worsening position compared to Q2. In particular, placements were forecast to overspend by 11.4 million due to placement numbers being higher than budgeted for, with the service having seen a 2.4 increase in the number of placements since March. The panel acknowledged the service is supporting individuals with the most complex and costly care needs across the population. There's been an increase in bed-based care, which could indicate greater acuity, or that people remain in their own homes for longer and coming into care at a later stage when their needs were higher. Same for across all directorates. Average prices are higher than last year due to national insurance and employers' national insurance contributions. We were also reminded as a panel that under the Care Act, if a person meets eligibility criteria, the council has to provide care. And the importance of providing the right care at the right time and the right place was noted, together with prevention activities and working with the market on price. Savings of 578,000 in adult services were noted, part in due to the allocation of the pension fund savings, and also in relation to a change in accommodation for replacement care being moved to Greenhit Lodge. The net budget for adult services has grown significantly, and the panel noted that a council transformation plan will be included in the report for 5th of February Cabinet. The panel gained an understanding about the process for provider market fee negotiation. We understand that council does well there, and our costs are a lot lower than they are for other councils. And we also looked at direct payments, and we were reassured that review would take place if it was identified that payments were not being used. This is where we allocate payments to individuals, and then they can choose which provider they want to use. So just to make sure that is being used efficiently and not being wasted. We also focused on the high-cost complex care packages and how the council will continue to negotiate with the ICB, recontinuing healthcare where appropriate. But obviously the ICB has its own budget constraints as well. And then also we noted that even if there was a council tax increase of 10%, it would not keep pace with the percentage increase in average weekly placement costs, which is quite sobering. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on following actually both children's and adults. What you can see there, and we spend a lot of time looking at this, those are the two fundamentally largest budgets within the council. They are very, very large budgets. I think what's heartening for me to hear is that both of the chairs are not coming saying there's a fundamental area over here where we're wasting thousands. That gives me some heart that we are driving at the efficiencies and we are getting that right. And it comes back to my point I made earlier, really. It's easy to look at the global numbers and say, well, if you're spending 175 million to save 10 million out of that, doesn't seem very much at all, does it? But remember, we've been doing that for the last 12 years. And so where there was strange ways of working or old-fashioned ways of working, they've all gone. You know, you have to think about in the last few years, we've reinvested into new IT systems. We've already put in place those efficiencies. We are driving down that cost. And there are some inescapable issues that we are facing, like national insurance, like minimum wage, like numbers that are simply coming through the door. And those are not within the gift of the council, but they do have a statutory element in that people are required to have that care. There is only so much efficiency we can do. And we are looking, we've talked about a transformation plan. We will look at that right across the council. So it won't just be children and adults, but it will fundamentally affect them. And we will look to go to the next level of efficiency, which will be around using AI. It will be around automating processes. It will change the way in which we do things currently. It shouldn't affect the outcomes. It should absolutely maintain, if not improve the outcomes. You know, it will give people 24-hour access and various other things, but you won't speak to a person. And so there is always going to be a compromise within all of these efficiencies that we drive forward. But it is heartening for me to hear that they have been through the real detail with it, and members cross-party have looked at and haven't come up and said, hold on a minute, do we really need to do that? You know, I think that's really helpful, and is part of overview and scrutiny for me, is to make sure that we haven't missed something, there isn't anything glaring that we should fundamentally be doing. So I'd just like to thank the members that have taken the time to go through that and give us that assurance. It's helpful.
You haven't
really
heard
helpful.
Josh yet?
No, but from children and adults, particularly, where those are the very big budgets, where, you know, if fundamentally we were going to find 10, 15 million pounds worth of savings, that's where you'd expect them, because the others just don't have that amount of money.
Josh.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I get on to the report for environment, obviously I'm new to scrutiny. My understanding that this normal scrutiny at OSPB is to scrutinise the budget that's coming up, but we're in a very difficult situation here where we've done the savings previously and we had to have an emergency OSPB to look at that, and we don't really know what the budget properly it's going to be, because we don't know what EFS we're going to get, and we don't know what council tax support we're going to have. So it feels a little bit like we're all here to just have a little bit of a chat, and we're not really actually scrutinising the detail, and we won't actually get the answers. And I don't think it's fair when we ask what you put it up council tax by, because you don't know what you can put council tax up by. You know, people can say what you've said before the election, but you know, you don't know what that is at the moment. Just to go on to environment, obviously it happened the day after a full council, again, a bit annoying to say the least. And we looked over some of the savings that were already agreed, and some of them that weren't. My understanding is the ones that weren't will be absorbed into the budget at the moment, and they won't be looking for further savings to match that amount of money. There's a lot of questions asked. Some of the savings we don't think really are going to be achieved, but you know, wish you the best on it. But we also, to come back to the point again of the Vice Chair from earlier, we did ask certain questions. So if you remember the first thing, which was, I believe, Plan A of the council, which was about cutting £2.5 million out the highways budget. Now, I remember doing scrutiny not long after that, and basically I asked what we spend that money on. I've asked that again, and I have chased it, and yet still don't have the answer for that. I've asked previously that if we were ever going to bring all these savings plans forward, that they would come to scrutiny panels first, so we don't have a farce, if I say the least, of in full council, or no disrespect to this, we don't know what we literally don't know what we're doing, but no, that doesn't come forward. So we've had to ask, and I know that someone talks about statutory, and I think, Steph, correct me if I'm wrong, there's only 3 things that this council does that are statutory. So some of them being sorry. Go on, Steph. Sorry, yeah, sorry. Yes, sorry on that. And so we've had to look at what what service level we're doing for them, some of those statutory things. But we keep hearing things, and I've heard it across different panels as well, about future things, future revenue, future things are coming to this cabinet, future things are coming to that one. I honestly have enough excitement in my life. Can you just tell us like what they are? And just bring them forward so we can have an opportunity to scrutinise them. The fact that we've had 3 emergency scrutiny meetings, 1 now at Children's and 2 at OSPB, means we're not being able to scrutinise this properly. And without a proper plan on what's going to happen, we can't scrutinise. The best decisions come when people are able to scrutinise and look at the stuff and give recommendations. You can ignore them if you want, but they should come to better answers for council. And until that, I don't even know what we're going to give us, notes from this meeting, other that we shouldn't be doing this like this next year.
So I'm going to have a go at some of that, if I may, and then I'll defer to Justin and Paul and Steph. So this year has been the first of its kind, Josh, in terms of the chronology that creates the budget. We've never had a separate meeting in January to discuss and determine savings that I can recall. And we had to call a special OSPB, didn't we, to get ourselves into a position to be able to look at that before a decision was made. And that wasn't without pain. And then, ironically, you have a meeting the day after, when the day before would have been so much more helpful. I'm going to go back to the general point about we can only scrutinise what's placed in front of us. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know the emerging thinking unless we know the emerging thinking. One thing I think we can all do better is form more constructive relationships, in my case, with the leader of the council, based on mutual respect. You guys with your cabinet member, so that, as far as it's humanly possible, that relationship would hopefully create a dialogue that would give opportunity in a timely manner to put the hope that the coach and the horse is the right way round, rather than the wrong way round, clearly, in your case, back in 2 weeks ago.
Just to come upon that point,
Josh,
I did meet with the cabinet member before full council, and then we're still yet and surprised at some of the stuff that came out at the scrutiny meeting.
Okay, so if scrutiny is going to be effective and even more effective, those personal relationships are quite important. They can't be ignored. We can't put barriers up and expect to find a way of communicating. We have to find a way cross-party, whatever it takes, to form that relationship, which is based on trust and mutual respect. So I've failed to do that. I'm struggling, okay? Put my hand up here. I need to find ways of engaging with Jo better than I have so far. It'd be great to see her at the meetings as well. I know she was really preoccupied with something else today. So the point we were making earlier that we might just return to for a moment, Justin, and I'll bring you in. If scrutiny is going to do more than scrutinise the Cabinet's proposals, if we're going to do more than that, because in a way the die is cast at that point, you know, they're going to change a few things on the edge, but they're not going to change the substantive issues. So we did see some impact on the countryside services car parking, didn't we? But other than that, and the issue right at the end of the meeting, it was pretty much done and dusted, wasn't it? So are scrutiny panels in the future going to be recalibrated and re-emphasised, perhaps to do more policy development than we currently do? Is that a way forward? And I'm just throwing that out there, because that's what we seem to be saying, that we'd like to be involved in policy development more than we have been in the past?
Again, on that point, I had on my work programme from the first meeting about review of speed limits, yet the Cabinet member did a review of speed limits knowing it was on the work programme and didn't bring it forward to tell me he was doing that until after it was done.
That re-emphasises my point about working relationships, isn't it? And maybe the group leaders, those who are here today and those who are watching, can help facilitate that. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I can't speak for highways, but I will speak for children and families. So I think, and Councillor McVeigh will correct me, within the first 4 weeks of me being appointed, I met with Councillor McVeigh and set out a broad vision about what I wanted children and families to look at. And then I kept the Children and Family Scrutiny Panel informed in terms of my plans around fostering, even before I'd fully formed them and the direction that I wanted to go with that. And after those were implemented, I brought them to panel as well. And then after that, I've outlined what phase 2 is, which is around the therapeutic foster homes. So for me, that is how it is. That is how we work. And that is, to me, that's the model going forward. Now, we're all new in reform, but we're finding our way. But I think there is a model that is being worked to in some of the areas. Not all, by the sounds of it, but that doesn't mean to say that intention isn't there. And I think as we go on, that is exactly how we will proceed.
Useful, Justin, and I think we need to sort of keep a monitor on that to let's see how that works and how we might facilitate that. You know, it's great that you guys are working together, but clearly that isn't the case across the piece. So what can we do to unlock that opportunity, which will create better agendas and better outcomes? Seb.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to sort of echo what Councillor Robinson said. It's really difficult with my panel that I have Cabinet members that seem to shift all their portfolio, goes into a third of my remit, then it's not in their remit. I do want to put on record, Councillor Wharton has always been really collaborative during the sessions. We've never had to meet outside of it, but I'm sure he would. But the real challenge is I don't think the Cabinet roles are defined enough. Do we only ever invite the Cabinet member for Doge, for example, because he's looking at efficiency? I don't think he attended a budget. I appreciate that was short notice. But taking off the chair hat and a member hat now, it's really frustrating. When I was part of Councillor McVeigh's wonderful Children and Families panel, it was really frustrating that all of a sudden we were told at the last minute that we had a plan being announced at Cabinet that would solve all of our SEND issues that's separate to the school. As a panel member, I had no idea what those are, and the Cabinet member said, we can't discuss it now, it's commercially sensitive. Why are we putting on a record that that is something, and then sort of teasing us, and then say, but I can't talk about it? It just seems a bit disjointed.
Lots of people want to speak. I mean, my understanding of that is that the way to have dealt with that would have been going into confidential session because it would be in the public interest to do so. Justin and then Paul.
It's just to take that point. So that was the cabinet member actually trying to give you information at the earliest opportunity and giving you as much information as he could. So that is actually what we're trying to do, is to let you know ahead of time what's, as much as we can. And I think I'm going to be nice. I think it's a little unreasonable to actually admonish him for not giving more than he could when he had already given as much as he could. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to recognise the point that you're making is this is new in that we've been an organisation that's had majority-led administrations for decades. We're now in a position where we haven't got an overall majority. We are doing things different this year, but I think there needs to be a recognition that uncertainty, I'm afraid, is a nature of the budget. We still, as we sit here today, don't actually know the final government settlement. And it could change. We could fundamentally get more money, we could get less money. It's unlikely we'll get less, but if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, we suddenly got £5 million extra for children's services in the beginning of February announcement from government. So it is very difficult, Councillor Robinson, to give you absolute, here's a list of the things we're absolutely going to do, because all of them are subject to a bid. And of course we are a political organisation, so we do then enter a political fray where it comes backwards and forwards. I think your point, Chair, is the absolute one. Finding a way to have a level of confidential involvement if you want to have influence before it becomes public. And I think that, let's be honest, that's just difficult in this circumstance. It's a very difficult situation. I don't envy any of you with that. But that probably is what the compromise is. It is frustrating for officers in that, as we sit here now with a month to go to set the budget, we still don't know the final numbers. So we can't absolutely tell you what that is. And therefore, we can't give you an absolute position of where the council is. And also the other thing I would always say to people is we are setting a budget. It's an estimate. It is not a solid state book that nothing will vary from. We are merely saying, what do we think the growth will be? What do we think inflation will be? What do we think demand will be? Now, of course, it's not without trend and it's not without information and data that backs that up, but it's always wrong. Whichever way, it's either slightly under or it's slightly over. Demand is higher than we thought or slightly lower than we thought. It varies. Suddenly things like the oil price changes, and suddenly running gritters gets twice as expensive or slightly cheaper. We are absolutely making a guesstimate amount of the total amount of money, and that's where we need to move away from saying it's an absolute number. It needs to be a legal budget. It needs to take account of the risks, but it is a budget. It is not an absolute set in stone position.
Well, thank you. I'm going to come to Nat in a second, but just picking up this thing about relationships and information flows. Can I ask you guys whether you get CMR cabinet member briefings? Have you ever attended one since you were elected last May? Okay. That might be a way of unlocking that pool. Okay, Natalie, where are you? Then Karen.
It's kind of half of what I was going to say, because although Justin and I do have a really good relationship and actually always have from the start, we got together pretty early doors, because as a new panel chair myself, even though we both have a background vocationally in children and families, I think it was important for us to get together and kind of share some values and some anticipated outcomes. So that's great. I don't have the same relationship with my other two. I've actually got 3 cabinet members, and I did meet with them all, but Justin and I suppose, cross paths more often because of corporate parenting and other things as well, and LGA stuff. But I was actually going to say exactly what you said. Was there a more formal way, rather than just kind of having conversations about receiving information and briefings?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's building on the point that Councillor McVeigh's just spoken about, and you have, Councillor Tom Wells. So historically, we had Cabinet member reports to Council. We had Cabinet member briefings. If you reinstated some of this, I think it would take some of the heat out of the decision-making process and would bring to the surface some of the issues that are there. You know, I work with a no overall control council at Bromsgrove, and Josh will know that I reach out sometimes at the 11th hour and say, this has come across my desk, can I get your support on this? That doesn't appear to be happening, and I do it across the board, not just with the leaders, but I open it up and say, come and talk to me. You know, it's okay, you've got to have a two-way communication when you're leading a council of no overall control, because it is like juggling balls and keeping the balls up in the air. But, you know, every sector of the council has to be listened to and engaged with. Just a suggestion.
I think that's good. We're going to, Justin, do you want to respond to that point?
I think they're already booked in for May, June, July. There's already Cabinet member reports coming, as I understand it. I could be wrong. I mean, the monitoring office is behind me, but that's my understanding.
Two slightly different issues here.
No, we are. My understanding is Hazel has approved with the leader a position where we will be doing cabinet briefings. So that has been put to the leader, and she's agreed to that and thinks it's a good idea going forward.
But why aren't we doing it now through you, Chair, ahead of setting the budget, to do some, as I call it, wicket rolling?
Well, I think we are trying to do that, but that's a question I can't answer. You'd have to ask the leader.
Okay, it's a fair point, Karen. What I would say is this: it is a minority administration. And that relationship and that trust and that respect will fall very quickly if the minority administration claims success and here and a success and a success there, because the rest of us will feel just we've been used in a process to prop up a... So the language, and the political language, needs to be adapted to reflect the fact that it's a collegiate workplace, not a adversarial one. If that's the road we're going to go down, I'd like to see it, but the language that's used by politicians would have to be adapted to accommodate that. Justin?
I don't disagree, but equally it has to cut both ways. And, you know, I would hope that those who, certainly I've dealt with, have found me to be reasonable and fair and balanced. And, you know, I speak for my colleagues, and that's what we want going forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps just indulge me a moment, because I do just want to pursue this line of questioning just for a little bit further, because Karen put a question to the Chief Executive that he fairly said he couldn't answer. That was really a question for the leader, and I'm going to therefore put a similar question to Councillor Bowen, and I'm not going to fall out with what you said, because I know you didn't say it in any way to mislead at all. So I'll put that on the record. You said, oh, like, you know, this is a learning curve, we're all new to this. With the greatest respect, the leader of the council and your leader was a previous councillor in the previous administration. Councillor Bennett was a previous councillor on this authority, and Councillor Amos was a cabinet member in the last council, and quite an experienced member. So there are members that know about this. So I just wonder why hitherto, since May, and you know, there's only so long one can argue that one's new for, you know, we're nearly, you know, we're certainly 10 months in, why there haven't been the cabinet member briefings thus far, and why at full council have we not had reports from cabinet members between May and now?
I think the answer is already evident, but I think we'll give you a go at answering it, Justin. You're 9 months in now.
You're like a judge when I cross-examine a witness, you are, Tom, sometimes.
And,
it drives us crazy, you know.
It sometimes feels like a court of law. With my honorary, indeed you did. You're playing very nicely. Justin.
And as nicely as I can, I'll simply say, and I'll just speak from my, you know, children and families position. There was absolutely no point me trying to bring a cabinet member's report or briefing before now, because actually trying to understand the nature of the problem did take time. And it was, you know, 1st of November when the first big set of changes went in, that was put before scrutiny. And the earliest opportunity, there will be a cabinet member report. So it is about timing.
I mean, I would reflect to you, Justin, that some members of the administration are now clearly stepping up to the plate and have got hold of their brief, and you are one, I'm not the only one, who is now 9 months in getting to grips with the role. We are in uncharted territory. I've never come across a circumstance like this. In fact, I've never come across a minority administration, never mind a new party being part of that. So these are exceptional times, and I would congratulate you, and I have others who are quite clearly now stepping up to the plate. What is a massive learning curve, to put it mildly, I'm sure. Right, now listen, I've got no other speakers, but I'm going to look at Dave, and I'm going to look at Sam and Andrew. Is there anything you'd like to say? Dave, as long as it's not pre-written.
You should know me better than that now, Chair. Okay. Right, okay. So I'm the Vice Chair for Economy and totally endorse what Marcus has already said. I was on the Adult Wellbeing panel as well. And again, it was quite clear the officers there are doing their damnedest, if that's the word to use, to make sure that they're being run well. And I appreciate everything they do. In terms of this, I do go back to some of the pre-discussion meeting that we had. And I do think we are in an unusual situation as we don't know what value the government is going to give us. And I think from an administration point of view, and as a member of Reform, I think we find ourselves in a difficult situation where we don't want to say frightening things or face the reality when we don't truly know what the reality is going to be. Okay? That's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, Dave. Andrew, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I really appreciate and echo the calls for cross-party working and briefing. Part of that, I think it's really relevant to point out there are vacancies on the panels that really it's embarrassing and not filled, and attendance at all these panels should be a lot higher. It was bizarre to sub in at economy, hearing that as the prime, it's all about the economy, stupid, people say, but that is one of our major concerns. Obviously, first priority in the plan is about getting the budget sorted, and there were scarcely 5 members at the economy briefing on Friday, which was a surprise. So yeah, without anybody who knows me will know that I'm fairly light on identity politics. It's all about getting the job done. Very happy to work together, but let's just actually do that, please. Thank you.
Sam, anything from you?
I would actually basically say what Councillor Cross has said. We do need a bit of collaboration across the parties, and I'm all up for, obviously I'm part of the administration, but if anybody feels like they would like to speak to me about something, come to me, and more than happy to help.
Hazel, I missed you out earlier. Sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify the point on the CMR briefings for council meetings. So I think it's fair to say that we do have a new administration, and so the AGM was in May 25, and it was at that meeting where council elected the leader, and then it is in the gift of leader to appoint their cabinet. So since that May AGM, we've had 4 council meetings, the ones being in July, September, November and January. I think it was a particularly long meeting in November with a big ticket item on the agenda being LGR. So we have got a timetable now which we can circulate round to all members, which has the individual CMR briefing starting from May onwards. But I think given it was a brand new administration, it wasn't possibly too unrealistic to expect that we haven't had any coming up to council before now. But we do have those on the agenda timetabled from May onwards.
Just on that one, in terms of how I'm going to come to Nat and now Marcus as well. In terms of how we set the CMR briefings up, I ask that you liaise with group leaders to make sure we've got the model that suits this new membership we have, rather than necessarily inherit a previous one? So could we just liaise with...
Sure, I think there's two different points being raised. So I'm talking about the CMR briefing reports, which are for the council meetings. So that's the timetable I'm referring to there. But I can certainly take away an action point for me to liaise with Sam as the statutory scrutiny officer to perhaps get meetings set up between the scrutiny chairs and their relevant CMRs for those regular briefings. I think there's two different points there.
Those meetings should also be attended by the appropriate director. Okay.
They would be supported by the relevant officers,
It
absolutely.
could be quite complicated because it could be more than one director. Nat and then Marcus.
Thanks, Tom. No, it was just a quick note of thanks to Sam and the team for squeezing in and rescheduling all of the meetings so that actually we did have chance to scrutinise the budget recommendations. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks, and I'm sure we would all agree, to Sam and the team.
Thank you. And just one follow-up point, and apologies for being grumpy, and I'm certainly not going to shoot the messenger, because at least we do now have a clear picture. I think it's unfortunate, and I'll use that word and no other, that it's taken until hitherto to get that articulated to full council.
Right. It was not the meeting I anticipated, but nevertheless it was quite productive in its own way. I'm going to try to summate, and you must tell me if I'm getting this wrong. So I'm going to conclude this part of the meeting. So first thing to say is I want to passport on all the notes that panel chairs have made from their composite meetings. They're all parcelled up and sent off to you with good wishes. In addition to that, we also note the council tax collection fund not being as buoyant as we anticipated, and that's not good news. And obviously the government settlement was not good news either. So we understand those two components have come in left field quite recently. We thank Steph for the figures about increases in council tax for an average Band D householder, because I think that's something that matters out there. I want to talk a little bit about relationships, which we've been focusing on for the last 20 minutes or so. I think there's a common view in the room that they could be better and more productive, though there are some good examples of where it is working. And part of the way of unlocking that is to start again with those private, I say private, but those one-to-one briefings between the cabinet members and the relevant chairs. And I think if we could get those diaried quite soon, that would be good. Paul, I don't know how we go about doing the same sort of thing with you and myself and Joe. If we could find a way of touchdown, yeah, perhaps in our diaries.
Just tell me when you want to meet. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's easy between me and you. That's easy.
Yeah, and Joe.
Oh,
and
Joe.
the
Okay.
leader.
Okay.
And the leader. That
and
would
the
be
leader.
the point.
Okay.
In the same way.
Okay. Well, I can speak to the leader about that. Ultimately, that will be
that would be
a
helpful.
debate between you and the leader. But for me personally, I can do it whenever you want.
Okay, that sounds good. The meeting started with the Vice Chairman throwing down the gauntlet about policy development. I think most people involved in scrutiny would welcome an opportunity to be proactive in policy development and to have their views understood and to play a part in that, because scrutiny can only go so far. We might want to think about how we can include policy development within our work, as well as holding the administration to account. Let's think about that. Let me just, can I just finish and then, okay, please.
For me, it's not just about views, it's also about ideas. Things that lots of members attend, lots of different things, they know lots of different people. Anything that people think might help us do it differently, better, cheaper, opportunities we're not missing. Lots of members are connected into lots of different worlds, and ideas as much as just views are really important.
Yes, I think that the briefings will help, because knowledge is power in this. We can't expect to get something out of nothing. We need to invest in it in terms of time and in knowledge to get something back out of it. Josh?
Yeah, again, just to go back on the briefing, I think vice chairs should also
be invited to that, and as they're invited to OSPB as well. Sorry if I pointed back at you there. I felt a bit rude. Sorry. But the other bit about, you know, ideas coming forward, I think that again can be a bit unfair on scrutiny, when scrutiny doesn't have the books just sitting in front of them and doesn't have the time to be sitting with the directors and the officers all the time, unless that's going to happen. And I don't believe that is going to happen because officers are extremely busy. But unless that's going to happen, I think it's going to be like on the cabinet who sit there with the officers, I presume, day in, day out, going through this pretty like in private, bringing the pros, bringing the cons of what it is, and then bringing it forward. Without that, I don't know how you expect scrutiny members to be able to do that.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, but we're talking about ideas, and I'll give you a cracking example. On, I think it was Monday last week, I recognised, for example, Councillor Boatwright Green's expertise in education. So I asked the cabinet member for education, and I kind of brought them together, and they were due to me. Unfortunately, Councillor Boatwright Green had his injury, so wasn't able to attend. But it's using expertise. You don't need to sit in front of the books to have expertise and ideas. So I think, with the greatest of respect, you're sort of narrowing it down. We don't sit in front of the books all day, I can promise you that, but what we bring is our expertise and our knowledge, which there is across the council, and it's more of an encouragement to say, bring that to bear, put forward your ideas. It's not a trying to catch you out or say you should be doing something that you're not. It's saying, we've got a hell of a lot of expertise across this council, so let's start using it. And that's what this is.
So this goes a long way beyond the budget. It's about future policy direction. And I've been on both sides of this. I've been the cabinet member, yes, it's true, years ago, where I hosted in those days, I can't remember who came, but certain people came, and I had the director in the room as well. Let me try to give an example that might help or might not. So you're attending your first meeting with the CMR and the director. They've created an agenda that they've given you in advance and asked you if there's anything you'd like to add to it. You then go through those items. Let's say, for the sake of argument, there's an item about, I don't know, parkway parking. And the officers come up with 2 or 3 ideas, okay, all with positives and negatives associated with them. You're there. You're saying, well, I'd like to take these options to my next panel meeting, actually. Or I'd like to have a say right now. And I want to understand more. That's the most important thing. It's that knowledge base. We can't function without the knowledge base. And that's where these things matter. Josh, I implore you to give it a go.
I think you've just said that you'd be expecting the cabinet members to be bringing forward those ideas, which is contradictory to what others have been saying, where they've been saying that they're expecting scrutiny members to bring forward. Your example there was a cabinet member or the directorate bringing forward a list of examples. That hasn't happened, and that's what I would expect to be happening from an administration.
I think you're right. I think there are occasions upon which our own local knowledge or areas of expertise in our professional lives might bring something to the table. In many cases, let me just finish the point. In many cases, it will be down to the more you understand, the more you learn, the more you can input in and say, have you thought about that? What about this? Paul?
I think we're going a bit down a blind alley here. Certainly my understanding of local government is that we're member-led. And the danger if you sit in a position where you expect us to come up with all of the ideas, you will get a flavoured list. You will get a flavoured list that comes from a profession, from a certain aspect of the community, and may well not reflect your locality. And you will also get a flavour of what the political administration of the day is. It will influence the ideas, because we know what's acceptable. We're not daft. We know what will be acceptable and what won't. What I'm trying to encourage is a voice in the room as well that says, yes, but have you thought about? So if I give you a classic example, one of the easier ones going forward for me is I can save a lot of money coming forward by saying we will digitise everything. We'll digitise it, we'll shut down all our phone lines and we'll put everything online and you will save money. That is an idea and we could do it. I know from conversations with other members that would say, what about older people? What about people with disabilities? What about people who don't have regular access? Are you going to cut people off in terms of their ability to contact, etc., etc.? And so you've got to be careful that if we're sat in a financial difficulty, I could get the position that tells me, save whatever money you can wherever you want to do it, and then we bring it to you to scrutinise, and then we get into a conflictual situation. What I'm talking about is having a general debate where you say, well, actually, in the work I do, which might be nothing to do with local government, that's the joy for me. You know, we are a product of local government, whether we like it or not. But if you work in a bank or you work in a private sector or you work like Marcus does as a lawyer, there may be things happening in his world and nothing to do with local government that he says, well, at our place we're doing this. Have you thought about that? We might not. You know, there is no guarantee that an officer will know. Nobody knows everything and will be plugged into those things. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not about saying I'm expecting Scrutiny to come up with the ideas. I'm not. We will come up with the ideas, but we will come up with a set of ideas because that's what we're programmed to do. If you want to make it wider, what you do is you allow people to throw their ideas in at the idea stage rather than at the end of the process, where it's then very difficult to unravel and get back to that point. I see this more as a position where you're able to input right at the bottom. Karen's doing it a lot on prevention. You know, she is. She is. You'll hear it in every meeting, whether people like it or not. She will say the answer to this is prevention. And people have not said that for 30 years. It's always been more treatment, new drug, get into hospital, flow better through the hospital. Actually, the solution is don't get them into that place in the first place, don't have the mill, you don't need them in hospital, you don't need the flow, you don't have the cost. But it's that kind of thinking to me that I'm trying to encourage Scrutiny to do, and not just look at what we've told you is the size of the world. What is the true size of the world, and could we do it differently? Because that's the future of local government, doing it differently. How do we do this thing differently?
Well, let's agree that we're going to do it differently from now on here, and we're going to have those routine, diarised meetings, and we're going to see how they go. Okay? Seb.
Thanks. I just want to come in briefly with that. Two things, really. One, more than happy with an open mind to engage and things like that. I think it's a really good idea that we talk more. What I will say is, with my panel, we often go to time, and I mean really, really to the last minute. I'd really struggle to then put policy creation in there. But also what I will say is, well, to me, a great forum to do this would be Cabinet, but now we're limited to one question. And when are we going to do I have an expertise, I have an education degree. Now, Councillor McVeigh is incredibly gifted in the education world, but then there's conversations going on between different stakeholders with knowledge. When are we going to have could you describe what your skills are? I'm more than happy to do that, but actually we are 9 months in now. No one's tried to get to know what I could bring to the table. I do have more than just an opinionated voice.
Seb, for heaven's sake, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. I'm hoping officers will take that as an action, that we need a little pen picture of all 57 of us, because there's an amazing resource. Lots of people want to speak all of a sudden. There's an amazing resource, a human resource that we have that we're probably underutilised at the moment. I'm going to ask Sam if you want to say something.
It works both ways, so you could just pick up the phone and speak with somebody. You don't have to wait for them to come to you. You could go to them.
Okay, so we've agreed that, I think, in one way or another, with Josh's reservations, we're going to give it a go. With Seb's reservations about time and constraints. Personally, I'm far more interested in policy development than marking someone's homework, to be honest, as an individual. I'd like to be able to say, do you know, I had some part in that creation. Bloody good scheme, isn't it? Yeah. So just finally, I'm going to make the point again, ad nauseum, I'm afraid, but it was captured quite a lot this afternoon, and that is the need at some point to revise the corporate plan, or at least set out some principles, guiding principles for future budget considerations. And then just a quick point about, we talk about efficiencies as though that's the only saving we're making. It's harder to say we're going to spend less and do less. I realise that politically. But sometimes, you know, we have to tell the truth. And sometimes an efficiency actually isn't an efficiency. It's to save less to do less. And we need to be quite explicit about that and you know, be prepared to make that argument rather than just accept it's all fine, we're just going to spend less of your money. That's the main points I've captured from the meeting. Sam, is there anything else that you've captured as an officer?
No, you've picked up everyone that I'd written down, actually, Chair.
Okay. Unless anyone's... Oh, Josh, go on.
I don't know if it's for here, but I think one of the things you learn from this year is not to do what we've done this year again. I can imagine we're going to be in a very similar position next year, and I don't want to have to, you know, as I say, have emergency meetings put in left, right and centre and have scrutiny, post-scrutiny. So I think we've all got to look to how we can do this in December and January.
I think we all concur with that, Josh. But politics is the art of the possible. And given the circumstances that prevailed this year, I'm not sure we could have got it much better, even with hindsight.
No, sorry, I'm not asking for it to have been better, because obviously it was the way it was, but we're probably going to have this again next year, and are we going to end up having a briefing at the beginning of December? Why don't we just start thinking of putting our budget stuff in December?
Sam, you are involved in this programme of meetings and things?
Yes, so Steph and I have already been talking about the schedule towards the later end of the year and about making sure the scrutiny panels work with the cabinet meetings and the council. So if we have the scenario again, we'll have the meeting schedule better. So we're having a relook at the schedule.
Good news. Thank you, Sam. Anything else anyone wants to say? I'm hoping not, because I think I might have just tried to summate. That being the case, that's the end of this item. It's not quite the end of the meeting. But I know that you want to stay, but you can go, Steph, Justine and Paul. Thank you so much. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes, literally a couple of minutes. It's a quick dash to the loo. To look at our work programme. Is that a... sorry, Nat, is that... I didn't think there would be, but if there is... Okay.
Sorry, yeah, just quickly, because it's the first time that we've had a young person attend children and young people's panel to share his experiences of the SEND improvement plan and the co-production work. And it was just a really valuable experience that I'm hoping will be repeated. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that had happened and that we sent a thank you letter to Matthew for attending. Thank you.
Right, so looking at the OSPB work programme, I think we've got a wrong date. It's the 25th, isn't it? We could compete with full council. It's only a budget meeting. Possibly wouldn't do very well. So that's that meeting. And in terms of the business, Sam, can you guide me?
At the moment, all you've got scheduled is scrutiny, bleed member updates and work programmes, so you can bring something forward. You did mention...
Do you know what I'd like? Yeah, are you going to say this?
You said about the possibility of additional budget discussion depending on what came through.
I did say that, and I think we need to provide some capacity to do that. I suspect we'll probably want to do something. Something will emerge in the budget papers that we think we need to talk about. The other thing, which is a bit of a challenge, I know, we were speaking, I think, at our last meeting, or the one before last, about the appalling service the post office provide. And we were talking about trying to get someone in from the post office to give us an explanation about what's going on.
You mean Royal Mail?
Royal Mail. Royal Mail. Yeah. Royal Mail. Whoever they are. They used to provide letters in my letterbox. Sam, it's a big ask, but we can scrutinise external providers, and I think this would be in the public interest to do so. So could we see what we can do to set something up for that date? Because it looks like there's some availability that day. Karen?
We have on the work programme income generation. Wouldn't this be sensible to bring forward, to try and bring forward some policies around income generation, particularly when we're facing so much financial challenge, Chairman?
I think that's a really good point. I think, to be honest, I think it's a panel job rather than a board job, because it's diving into quite a lot of detail, isn't it? To do it across the piece would be quite challenging. I don't know. We can certainly add it to the work programme.
It's on our work programme already, and I'm just thinking...
So you're thinking about that meeting?
Yeah, I am, because I'm thinking ahead of budget setting. You know, we've just been told we need to be bringing forward ideas. My idea is we look at income generation, and we look at it not just for next year, but for the subsequent years as well.
I think probably for the subsequent... I think it's unlikely that we could amend the budget with a few hours before. I think officers might struggle with that. But we can certainly... It's on, I mean, what we heard today was the budget process is ongoing now. It's not a once in a year, it's 12 months a year. So yeah, let's see if we can do that. But I don't want to lose the Royal Mail thing, because I'm sure all of us have had some correspondence about it. And it'd be nice to go beyond the council itself, wouldn't it? So let's see if we can do that. In terms of that's our next meeting. And that takes us into March, where it looks to me as there's some capacity there too. And looking at the panels, how are we fixed for the panel meetings then? Have you got lots of things to be doing? Yeah. Okay. We still haven't established a task and finish, and there is the potential for that. So if something emerges in this budget process that you think needs a deep dive rather than a shallow one, then let's set up a task and finish to look at it. It might be that that's what the income generation thing ends up being, because I think it's more than a meeting. Okay, let's ponder on that as well. about whether that's the best way forward. I instinctively think, Karen, it's a better way forward than trying to do it here for half an hour, to actually have a good deep dive in it across the piece. What are we, I mean, Richard Udall almost need to share it actually, because it would be cross-cutting, wouldn't it? And since he had suggested it, Richard, if you're listening, maybe that's something you might do. We'll have a look at that. Okay, that being the case, thank you, everybody. It was a meeting of unexpected joy.
Joy.